evening, everybody. Camera works, first time, unlike last week. But there we go. Welcome, everybody, to Sunday Night Live. And we are on the for you guys in the United States, the 16th of July. Here it is the 17th because it's just gone past midnight. But welcome to the show. Hope everybody has had a great week. Certainly since Wednesday's show. By the way, the last few shows have been absolutely awesome. They've been total belters, and I'm really, really pleased. So thank you very, very much, everybody, for your great questions and the great discussions that we've had over the last several weeks. It's been absolutely fantastic. You guys are the best. I really, really value and appreciate you a lot. So please do keep the excellent first-class questions coming in. But for both shows, for both Sunday Night Live and also for Songwriting Simplified, it makes the show just move right along for both of them. So I really appreciate your questions a lot. And if you have like a really detailed question that you can't cram into the 200 characters minus my channel name, then please do drop me an email. Just go to the website. You can see it listed at the bottom there. JonnyLipshamStudios.co.uk. Go there and then hit contact us. There's a menu bar at the top. Just hit contact us and you'll be taken to a form. Fill that out, ask a question in there, and that will send an email to me, and your question will be dealt with first before any of the other questions in the chat. So if you want to be first in the queue, that's the best way to do it. Okay? Otherwise, if you have a question tonight, right now, and you'd like to ask it, please do in the chat type at Jonny Lipsham Studios first, and then follow that with your question. If you have to take a couple of posts over doing it, then that's just fine too. That's okay. But like I said, I really appreciate all the questions that we've had. And actually, I've been talking just recently with a few people, and one of the things that comes up quite a bit is when people move songs. Let's say they have a computer which they decide they want to replace that computer, so they replace it with a new computer, and they then go, great, now I'm just going to bring all my song files from my old computer over onto my new one. And they do that, and then they open up the first song, and they get an error message that lists all of these missing files. And they go, oh no, now what am I going to do? All of my audio files are gone. Basically, there's containers, but there's no waveforms in the containers, so there's no sound. What do I do? How do I fix that? Well, that is one of the things we are going to cover tonight, because I think it's an important point. There is a knowledge base article on personas.com that we're going to look at. And we're going to look at a secondary article as well. So we'll take a look at two articles in a bit of detail to cover this particular issue. So the two articles cover, one, how to fix missing files errors if you get them. Number two, how to successfully move a song from one computer to another, or from one hard drive to another. Let's say you have to replace a hard drive. It's exactly the same procedure. So we're going to take a look at that tonight. That's going to be probably the major focus of tonight, but definitely questions are still going to be essential. Ron Figura has a question, which we will get to. All right, so let's see. And actually, Louis, who is my sponsor at Alps Media LLC, he sponsors Sunday Night Live and Songwriting Simplified, and I appreciate all of his support. It's fantastic. He's done a lot for me, and for this channel, he's done an absolute ton as well. He's helped with the giveaway, for example, that we had earlier in the year. That is all thanks to Louis. He helped organize that and made that happen. So we will do more of those, definitely, when we hit certain milestones. So if you want to be part of another one of those giveaways, then all you got to do is help us get to the next milestone. At the moment, we are looking at moving towards 5,100. It's not really a milestone. It's just we went past 5,000. So that was why we did the giveaway. So we want to get to 6,000 as quickly as possible so we can do another one. But maybe we'll do one when we get to 5,500. So if you know people for whom you think what I do here at Jonny Lipsham Studios on this channel is going to help benefit them, then please get them along here, invite them, share these videos, share these live streams with them, and encourage them to come along to the show and ask their questions, and also get them to subscribe and like videos and all of that fun stuff. And also, whilst you're here, please do the same. Please go hit the like button. Please go hit subscribe if you're not subscribed. If you're not subscribed, by the way, you're not going to get into the chat because it's got subscriber mode only. So if you want to be involved in chat and you want to ask a question, you gotta be subscribed. So please hit that button and hit the notification bell as well. That'll help you know when my show is. Okay, if you don't already know, it's always 6 p.m. Central, either Wednesday or Sunday. All right, so we've also got Billy Morgan, and we've got Just Bob, and we've got Kyle Traduziak, and we've got Dwayne, and we've got Kevin from Kevin's Guitar Stories, and we've got Ron Figura, and we have Keith from Radio Tuck Trumpet. We have Don Oliver as well, and we have a new person here as well, which is awesome. We have Gardner99. I love that as a channel name. What a great name for your channel. That's awesome. And we've got Bobby Booth from Booth Mixing and Mastering Service. By the way, if you need mixing, we've got 2 of the best mix engineers in this community right here. We have Bobby Booth from Booth Mixing and Mastering Service. We also have Kyle Traduziak. So if you want your songs mixed and mastered, those 2 guys are the guys to go check out. So please do that. They will do you good. Trust me. They will do you and your music good. So where did I get to? And that's it so far. So Gardner99 says he has been using Studio One since version 3. Good for you. You are definitely in the right place. And Studio One 3, actually I came on board in Studio One 2 in 2013. So I've been using Studio One for around about 10 years now, which is awesome. And I would never look back. But one thing I certainly didn't think on when I first purchased Studio One, I had no idea that I would end up working for the company that makes Studio One. But here we are. I've been doing that for, 4 years now, which is awesome. I love my job. But I love doing this as well. This is awesome as well. All right, so I think we covered just about everybody who is here. If you are watching and you have not said hello in the chat, then please do. I'd like to get to know you so that you can get to know me. And also I will shout you out if you pop in and say hello in the chat. All right, so let's see what Ron Figura's question is. He says, if I use VST that supports key switches, do the key switches get recorded if I play them live whilst recording? Yes, they should do. They should do. Because your key switches should get recognized. So the way to check that is go look in the note editor and see if you can see the key switches being changed. If not, then you can certainly add them in after the fact. It's dead easy to do that. But yeah, they should do. Bobby Booth says he started with Artist version 2. Yeah, I started with 2 Professional. And that was it for me. And now I work for the company, which is freaking awesome. All right, so that's the first question. So I'm going to tackle this thing about moving songs and that kind of thing, and missing file errors and how to deal with that. Because Persona's technical support, they get a whole slew of people regularly kind of saying, hey, I've got missing file errors. And so what they normally do is they normally would send this article to people that have missing file errors. So because it's relatively commonplace that people have this. So reading this article really, really carefully and going through it really carefully and going through each step that you need to take to kind of deal with it is going to help a lot of you. Some of you, this is going to be, hey, I have never had missing file errors and I do this anyway. You guys can just sit back and be reminded about how to do this, and the rest of you watch along, especially if you have had missing file errors before. It's well worth paying attention to. So give me one moment whilst I go and grab that article, and then we will... Oh, I pressed the wrong button there. Hang on one moment. Yeah, I went and pressed the wrong damn thing. I do that sometimes. All right, we're good. We're good. So let's go to support. And I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see this. I'm going to put my camera on. So I'm going to put my camera on. There we go. All right, so when you click on support, the first thing you get is this section of articles. And we want to be looking in Studio One V6. And we want to look in, I think it's in technical support. It might be in here. Let me have a look. There's an article on managing key switches right there. So if you want to have a look, you can run. There's an article there on managing key switches. And it is in Studio One 6 how-to tips and tricks. So check that out. So let's go to technical support because I'm pretty sure it is in this section here. And I just have to go find it. If somebody sees it, please shout, because sometimes I miss the article. Where is it? Here we go. Why is my song telling me that there are missing files? All right. So take a look at this. All right. If you open a song in Studio One and receive an error that states you are missing files, please close Studio One, open the song folder for the song that you're working with, and delete the folder named cache inside of that song folder. You can then open Studio One and reload your song. So this is the first thing to try. And then it says here, by default, Studio One saves your songs to document Studio One songs. So that'll be on your C drive or on your Mac HD. All right. So in document Studio One songs, each song has its own song folder. Make sure that you are not using a cloud storage utility such as OneDrive or iCloud Drive to back up these locations in real time, as that can affect the availability of the data as well as the performance of recording audio. Below you'll find links to managing OneDrive as well as iCloud Drive respectively. So that's those two links there. So if you continue to have the issue after removing the cache folder, then you are more than likely looking at a configuration issue with your system and not a problem with Studio One. Below you'll find information about each of the 3 different scenarios where this can happen. All right. So scenario 1, if the error message that you're receiving indicates that you are missing audio files in the path that it is listed, please try the following steps. You may have inadvertently deleted the files during system cleanup or something similar. If searching, search the system trash as well. The files may be on an external hard drive that's no longer connected. You may have manually renamed or moved a folder, so now Studio One can't find the files. So this is important. This last point here is really important. If you move the .song file out of the song folder, you will break that link that exists between the .song file and all of the things that that song references in order to play your song and in order to record audio and MIDI data and all of that. All right. So in the song folder, there is a folder called the media folder. And in that folder is where all your audio recordings go. All right. So anytime you record something or anytime you bring in a file from an external source, such as a loop library, when you are working on the song and you drag all of those things in, let's say you're just dragging in stuff from a loop library, make sure when you hit save that you also right click the pool and check and click on the option to copy external files. All right, which is what it says next here. If audio files are missing in a song, go to the browser pool tab and sort by location. That view will show you the file paths of where those files should be, where Studio One loaded them from before. You can look at those paths and try to determine why those files are no longer there. So for example, if you have just moved the .song file, but not the folder that it is contained in, then Studio One's not going to see all of those reference files. And all you need to do is just either put the song back and then move the folder, or kind of move the folder and reconnect it with the song. And then when you do that, it should magically automatically see everything, because when you reload the song, it'll go, aha, those files that I was looking for earlier that were not there are now there, and now I can reference them and you can use them in your song, and the missing files error message will go away. Going forward, always go to the pool and right click copy external files to make sure that all of your referenced audio files are in the song folder. This is especially important if you're using external files such as loop library files. So if you're using a loop from a drum loop library or a trumpet loop library or Chris Hine horns or something like that, and there's a loop that you like and you drag that into Studio One, if you save the song, it doesn't save the external files automatically. Okay, you need to set it to do that. So there's an option that will remind you to do this. So in options, so Studio One options on a PC or Studio One preferences on a Mac, go to locations and then user data. And there's an option there, ask to copy external files when saving the song. So when you check that option, what this does is when you do Control S or Command S to save the song, a dialog box will come up saying, do you want to copy the external files? Click yes. Every single time. Don't even think about it. Just click yes. Every single time. Okay? And then what that will do is all of those files that you have used in your song that have come from external sources like loop libraries, or you've brought in from a workspace or some other place, or from Google Drive or something like that. When you have that option and you click yes, all of those are now going to be copied to that media folder. So that means when you open up the song again in the future, all of those files are going to be there. And certainly if, let's say, the hard drive packs in, so you need to recover the data that's on that drive, or you get a better hard drive and you want to move everything across to your new hard drive, there is a very simple solution to that, which we'll talk about in just a minute. So make sure that you have that option checked. I always have that option checked. I have never had an error message with missing files ever in 10 years of daily use of Studio One. I've never had that, because that dollar box comes up, I click yes, they all get copied, everything is fine. If the error message says the error message that you're receiving indicates that you're missing sound sets or add-ons that you purchased or installed with Studio One, that's a different issue. So if it says, hey, this sound set that you may have had with Persona Sphere, for example, and then let's say your membership lapses, it expires, you decide you don't want to be a member anymore, and so you allow it to expire. But you've used some of the sound sets that are available with Persona Sphere. Now, those will now be deactivated. They're not available to you anymore. So you will get that error message. It'll just say, hey, these can't be found. So it says here, please open Studio One, go to Studio One options or preferences, locations, user data, sound sets, and check the location that Studio One is looking for your sound sets. If they're in the correct location, simply double click one of them to have the program reload them. If you are missing sound sets, please follow the instructions in the following article to reinstall them. And that's a link to that article there, installing additional content. Okay, and that's from the getting started section. All right, so if you have not installed something, or you had installed it but then you deleted it, then you can just go download it again. All right, and that's the end of that article. So it's a good one, and it's definitely one to bookmark and reference. So let me go open that article again, and then I'll post the URL to that article in the chat here. Just Bob says, is there a box you can save as clicked to make that automatic? Save external files. No, it's not automatic, but you can set it so that every time you hit save, or when you save the song that you've been working on, you've got new files in the song. When you press save, it will detect that you've got new files in the song. It'll ask you, do you want to copy those? Always click yes. It's that simple. It really is that simple. When you see that dialog box, hit yes. Don't even think about it. Just hit yes. It is not automatic. There you go. So that's that article. Okay. Let's close this one and we'll go to that other one. I'm buying a new computer. No, it's not that one. I think this one is in this how-to section. Let's go see if I can find that article. It doesn't look like it's here. I thought it was in this section. Here we go. Moving songs between computers. So this article will outline things to be aware of if or when you move Studio One songs. Copying a song folder from one computer to another to avoid the most common issues involved with doing that. Audio files. Make sure that all of the referenced audio files and samples are collected into the song folder, in the media folder in the song folder, that should say. This can be accomplished by opening a song and going to the browser pool tab and right-clicking, selecting copy external files. And again, make sure that you have this set, okay? Studio One has an option that will remind you to do that on a regular basis as you work. Options, preferences, locations, user data, ask to copy external files when saving a song. Doing the above will ensure that all referenced audio files follow the song folder if you move or copy it to another computer. This will also cover the most singular third-party sample content like drum samples and similar things. All right, so I'm just going to pause here just for one moment. So let's say you want to copy your entire collection of songs over several years on one particular computer, and you've got a new computer, brand new, spanking brand new computer, and you want to move all of your songs in one move from that one computer to another. Here is how you do it. Okay, so I'm just going to go back over to the lounge here for a second. So here's how you do it. So what you want to do is you want to go to your songs folder that was mentioned earlier. So that's going to be Documents, Studio One, Songs by default. You might have changed it to some preferred location that you have. Like, for example, my songs are on my secondary drive. My second drive is my D drive. And it's simple D:/songs. All right. So if I want to move everything in one move, I go to that songs folder and I copy it to an external hard drive. All right. That's step one. Copy it to an external hard drive. Once it's all done, make sure you safely eject that hard drive from the computer. Then you can shut down your old computer and you can put it away. You don't need it anymore. On your new computer, plug in that external hard drive, that same one that you just copied your songs folder to. Plug that in to your new computer. Then copy that songs folder to your new home, the new location for all of your songs. So that might be a secondary drive like I have. So you may well have a folder there called, you just move it to your D drive and it'll just become D:/songs. They're all done. Okay, so now you've got your entire song library, your entire song collection in one move from one computer to the other without upsetting the whole thing and ending up with scattered missing files everywhere, which is not what you want. So this is why you don't move the .song file. Don't move the .song file. And this goes for if you are sending that to somebody else. Let's say you are sending this song to collaborate with somebody else who uses Pro Tools, and you want them to mix your song. So you're going to send them everything. Now, you could send them stems, arguably, if they're using a different DAW. But let's say they are using Studio One, and they're using Studio One 6 Professional, just like you are. You are using Studio One 6 Professional. Your collaborator friend is using Studio One 6 Professional. Neither of you are members of Presonsphere in this scenario. But you want to give this person the song so that they can maybe add some guitar parts, some horn section parts, and then you're going to say, hey, why don't you mix the song whilst you're at it? And they're going, yeah, sure, I'm happy to do that. So what you would do in this instance is you would use cloud storage like Google Drive, and you will locate the song folder on your D drive, like I just talked about, and you will send to a Google Drive location that folder, the whole song folder, not the whole overall song folder that has every song you've ever made on it, but that one particular folder for that specific song. So you send them that whole song folder, because that folder has the song file, it has the media folder, it has the image data folder. The image data is basically for all the waveforms, okay? And it has everything that you need. It has the cache file, it has any history, it has like a cache folder. It might have a history folder as well. And it might have a bounces folder as well. So if you've like rendered anything that's got Melodyne in it, those are going to be in the bounced folder. This is why the whole song folder needs to go to your collaborator. If you just send them the .song file, they'll get a file that they'll get the song that they can't do anything with because there's nothing in it. Because Studio One references these sources, okay? This is the thing a lot of people don't quite understand. And that is Studio One doesn't have anything stored inside it, right? Everything's stored in different locations on your computer. Okay? So, sound sets are located on your computer in one location. Song folders are located in a completely different part of your computer. And Studio One references all of those folders. It looks in those folders, it pulls out the data it needs for each of this, for whatever the song requires. And then it plays all of that back so that you can hear it, and then you can add to it, you can record to it, you can mix it, whatever. Okay? Nothing is actually written to the program. They are written to different locations on your computer. And just about every DAW does this. So it's not unique to Studio One. Pro Tools does it, Cubase does it, Ableton Live does it. They all do it. Okay? This is just how they work. But it's really important that you understand that. Otherwise, you're going to end up with missing files, missing files, missing files, missing sound sets, and all of that. So that was an important little aside. So sound sets. Any songs that may have used a .sound set content from Studio One will need to have those same sound sets installed on the other person's computer. Otherwise, they'll show as a missing file. So, scenario here. You are using a sound set that you've got with Presonsphere. But your collaborator is not a member of Presonsphere, so they don't have that sound set. So when you send your song to them, they're not going to have those sound sets. So it will just come up as a missing file. This being the case, if you are happy with the sound of the track that is using that sound set, bounce that thing. Render it. Render it to transform it to rendered audio. So it prints the whole thing to an audio file, then you won't get the missing sound set error, okay? Same for third-party plugins. If you're sending a song to somebody else and you have used a third-party saturator or rotary plugin or whatever, and the person you're collaborating with doesn't have that, they are not gonna be able to use it. They will just get a missing devices error is what they'll get. So you got to have them both on both systems. So this is where good communications with your collaborator is going to be really important. So I hope that this is helpful to avoid missing files and missing devices errors. So please make sure that you are paying attention to those things and you'll not run into any trouble. All right, let's go back to questions here. So let's see what we have here. Garden99 says, can I run Studio One Sphere as in Studio One activated with Persona Sphere on multiple computers? Yes, you can. You can do this up to 5 times. You can activate on 5 computers. Here's the caveat though. They've got to be computers that you own and that you use. So they've got to be computers that are yours. You cannot share activations with other users. That is a violation of the user license agreement. Okay. So you can't do that. So you can't have your brother Jim, who is in another state, and you can't give him your activation. You can't do that. That's a violation of the user license agreement. So please don't do that. Please don't share your activations of either Persona Sphere or Studio One with other people. Okay. It's against the end user license agreement. So yes, otherwise the answer is yes. If you want to do that, you can do that on up to 5 computers that you own and use. All you need to do, log into mypersonas.com, my.personas.com, I should say. Just log into my.personas.com on the computer you want to activate on, download and install Studio One on that computer, and then go to launch Studio One on that computer, and then go to Studio One from the menu bar, Studio One activation, activate with Persona Sphere, hit the activate button, done. And then you can do that on, so for example, in my case, I have Studio One activated on this computer, which is my PC. I have a Mac just out of shot here. It's activated on there. And I also have my work laptop and it's activated on here as well with Persona Sphere. So I have 3 activations of Persona Sphere on 3 different computers that I use. Plus, because I have Notion Mobile, I have Notion Mobile activated with Persona Sphere on my phone and also on my iPad Pro. Because you can activate Notion Mobile with Persona Sphere on all of those devices and it unlocks all of the expansion sounds. So it's a good reason to do that. All right, let's see. Bob's New York says, if I wish to speak Scots, do I have to roll my R's? Well, here's the thing. Scots is actually a language. I mean, this is kind of outside the scope of what I do on this show. But to give you a wee background about me, I'm Scottish. And so Scots is actually a language. It's not just a dialect. A lot of people think it's just a dialect. It's just, you know, a speaking English with a Scottish accent. No, it has its own words, its own vernacular, its own grammar and syntax. Okay, it is under UNESCO a United Nations protected language. So it is an official language of Scotland, of which there are 4 official languages in Scotland. There's Gaelic, there's Scots, and there's English, and there's Doric. Doric is spoken around the Aberdeen Inverness area of Scotland. So there you go. And yes, for some words you do have to roll your R's. Billy Morgan says, yes, you can authorize 5 copies of Studio One. You can access Sphere on any browser. Yeah, you're kind of about 95% right there. You don't get 5 copies of Studio One. You get 5 activations of your 1 copy of Studio One. Which is, I know it sounds like I'm making a semantic argument, but it's really important, actually. It's an important distinction to make. Because you only get 1 copy of Studio One with Persona Sphere. And and you get to activate that 5 times. It's the same if you buy a perpetual license. If you just buy Studio One outright, you get 1 copy of Studio One, but you are allowed to activate that up to 5 times on 5 different computers that you own and use. That's what the end user license agreement states. But otherwise, other than that, you are correct. Simag N says, does the HD7s need external sources and amp or not to have full capacity? It does not. If you have an audio interface that has a headphone socket on it, just stuff the plug into the headphone socket, turn up the volume and listen. Okay. I have these, and I'm going to fudge getting these out again. Thank you for that. I have these guys. These are the HD7s, just in case you don't know what they are. PreSonus HD7, they are semi-open backed. I have them plugged into my monitor station. My monitor station has 4 headphone sockets on it. And I suppose that they have a headphone amp in them, but so do most interfaces. Most interfaces have a headphone amp in them. You just find the headphone socket, you plug it in, you turn up, and you're good to go. Okay? Should be that straightforward. Let's see, what else do we have? Only share body fluids. Yes, Billy, that is exactly what the EULA should say. It should say that. It should say only share body fluids, not licenses. Absolutely. So, yes, totally. Gardner99 says it goes by your IP address. What goes by your IP address? I'm not entirely sure what you're referring to there. Can I run Studio One Sphere on multiple computers? It goes by your IP. Well, actually, that's not 100% how it works. It activates on the computers. It drops an activation file onto your computer. Okay, so it's not just your IP address, because I have one IP address, but I have several computers in this that are on the same network. Okay, so that doesn't count as one activation. That counts as 3. Actually, I've actually used all 5 of my activations, because I've got 3 for Studio One on these computers, and then I've got 2 for Notion Mobile. So they all count. But here's the thing. I've activated with PreSonus Sphere on all those 5 devices, because they've got different, they've got either Notion or Studio One on them. But what happens is when you activate with PreSonus Sphere, it drops a subscription license file onto that device. So that's my phone, that's my iPad, the Mac, and the PC. Okay, so each one of those has a subscription file on it. And so when I launch Studio One on either of these computers or on my laptop down there, the first thing that happens when you get those messages that scroll down on startup is, the first thing it does is it calls home. It calls to your account and goes, okay, does this computer's subscription file match what is on the person's account? And he goes, yes, it does. Or if it doesn't, then it doesn't start. Okay, so that's kind of how that works. All PreSonuses have Mac drivers built by PreSonus, or some can use core audio. What? I'm not sure what that means. Yes, Universal Control is the driver for PreSonus hardware products. So that includes all interfaces, that includes the mixers, that includes pretty much every device, really, apart from microphones. Microphones don't necessarily need Universal Control unless they are Revelator microphones, in which case they do, but for the most part, they don't. So like the little small diaphragm condenser microphones that are like for drum overheads, those don't need Universal Control. But the Revelators do, all the interfaces do, all the mixers do. They all use Universal Control. The fader ports, even though they are not audio devices, they are control surfaces, they use Universal Control. All right, so That's an important thing to learn there. And universal control works on Mac and PC. So if you're on a Mac, universal control is what you need for a PreSonus audio device, be that an interface or a control surface, or a revelator. It's because see if we use class compliant via Mac or Core Audio, so all are powered by drivers by PreSonus. Cool. Okay, you're kind of confusing things a wee bit there. If you're using an interface that is not PreSonus, then it'll have its own drive. It'll have its own driver, or it will, as you say, be class compliant and will work in Core Audio. Now, most PreSonus interfaces also are able to work in class compliant mode, but that is not how they are best designed. They are best designed when they run with universal control. So there you go. That's important to note. All right, we've got about 15 minutes left. Anybody got any other questions? Dave says, I believe it identifies with the internal MAC address within the device as far as recognition of devices within the software. You're partly right. Partly right. Yeah. So when you activate when you activate Studio One or Notion Mobile with PreSonus Sphere, it drops a subscription license file on your computer. Dave says, I just guess. Yeah, you're kind of semi-right. MAC addresses do have something to do with it, but it's not the sum total of the whole thing. All right, beverage break. The one thing I will say, folks, going back over here, one thing I will say is, I know it kind of sounds like a boring thing to do, but please do go and check out the articles in the support section of your account. The reason being is because there is a lot of things here that will answer questions for you. Like, for example, how do I record the mix back into an audio track like in Pro Tools? For example, when you're doing audio summing and you want to print the summed output from your summing device back into Studio One. This article addresses that. Or if you want to do what I'm doing, live streaming with OBS and on a Windows PC. On a Mac, it's a lot easier because you can create an aggregate device, but on a PC, not so straightforward because of the way Windows was designed when it comes to handling audio. They didn't think of such things. So they decided not to go down the aggregation route and have like an aggregation feature built into their sound management. So it's a little bit clunky, it's a little bit convoluted, a little bit unnecessarily complicated, but it is the way it is with Windows. So this is an interesting article. Audio dropout protection and low latency monitoring. This is very well worth reading if you are encountering clicks, crackles and pops and that kind of thing, and you want to figure out how you can deal with that. Problem with rounding errors when copying loops. Yep, some loops don't start exactly at the start. Sometimes they have a little bit of a lead in. You got to take that into account. Otherwise, things will gradually start to shift out of time. How to back up your settings. So this is actually really important, especially if your settings files become corrupt. Always good to have a backup folder with a clean set of settings so that if your settings files do become corrupted and Studio One starts misbehaving as a result, you can just delete all of your settings files and you can bring in the settings files from your backup folder. I ask people to do this regularly when they have some kind of weird issue in Studio One. I say, hey, just go and delete your settings files and then restart Studio One, allow it to write a brand new set of files, but make a backup copy first. Just in case this doesn't solve the problem, then you can put your settings files back. Because when you ask it when you delete all of your settings files, you delete all the things like custom colors, for example, if you've got a particular, I call it a theme, it's not really a theme, but if you've colored Studio One to have a particular appearance, like this, for example, you've gone into Studio One, Options, General, Appearance, and you've gone and played with this, and you've come up with a preset that you like, which you've then stored, like I have here, Jonny Lipsham Studios 2021. All of these custom presets will get erased. Okay, they will get gone, and also your recent files list on the start page. Oops, let's cancel that. Your recent files list here will get emptied as well. That doesn't mean your songs disappear. Nope, they don't get touched at all. But the recent files list, which is just a list. It's just a list, and it gives you a handy link to the most recent file you've worked in. Okay, but this list gets purged. The songs remain. They are still there. They are still on your computer. They haven't been deleted. It's just that this list gets purged. So this will appear blank when you have new settings files. If you want to keep those, there is a custom way of doing that. So that's why I say, if you've got custom settings that you want to keep, if your settings files have become corrupted, then things like these are all stored in certain settings files, and that article will help you out. Okay, so there's lots of very, very helpful articles here to go through. Neil Thompson says, but if we all went to the Presonus articles, there would no longer be a need for Sunday Night Live. Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Because you might not necessarily fully understand the technical writing involved with one of these articles. And so you might need somebody like me on a Sunday Night Live to actually demonstrate what the article here is talking about. For example, the backing up your settings files. I can go into that in a little bit of detail on another show for sure. We're out of time for this show, but certainly. Let's see. Why does MIDI files demand more power than WAV files? I'm not entirely sure that that's true, actually, that MIDI files demand more power than WAV files. I don't think that that's necessarily 100% true. Because essentially MIDI is just data. That's all it is. It holds no sound whatsoever. MIDI is just data. It's just no on, no off, and the pitch, the specific note that's been played, and any kind of key switches or sound variations that have been used. That's it. It's just lists of data. That's all MIDI is. It's just data. It holds no sound. So actually, if you're working strictly with just virtual instruments, unless the virtual instrument you're working with requires lots of multi-layered samples to be processed, then actually you're working with less, not more power. So if you're working with something like Omnisphere, where there are multiple levels of samples and multiple levels of sounds for just one pitch, then yeah, that's going to take more processing power than if you just sing la into a microphone and record it. So that is that is where you are correct. So pure audio of recording an acoustic guitar or a drum set into Studio One and then playing that back doesn't require an awful lot of power, because it's audio data. It's just sound. It doesn't require much in the way of processing. Once it's in Studio One, it doesn't require a whole lot of processing, unless you start adding plugins and stuff like that. But the raw audio doesn't really require your computer to do very much hard work. Whereas if you've got multiple instances of something like Omnisphere or Contact from Native Instruments, and lots of virtual instruments, maybe, you know, large orchestral libraries, or you're working with highly processed sound files that are like sound fonts or something like that, then yes, those use a lot of power. Why? Because they have to be processed multiple times in a row, in series, into your computer whilst you're actually playing the note in real time. So that's where MIDI can become more of a power consumer than audio. But it's not always the case. It kind of depends. And so there is a little bit of a trade-off. So if you're just using something like Presence XT inside of Studio One, that's all you use. You don't use Omnisphere. You don't use Contact. You're rarely ever going to see any major power consumption problems with those, because they are very streamlined. And there's not like, you know, 50 or 60 layers of different samples of different velocities, like you would have in a complex orchestral library, where there's a sample for a down bow, there's a sample for an up bow, there's a sample for the bow played on its side, there's a sample, you know, there's a sample for just about everything. There's a sample for pianissimo, there's a sample for, you know, if you understand music notation, you know, pianissimo, which is like 4 or 5 P's. So we're getting really quiet. So we're getting from like exceptionally quiet incrementally to exceptionally loud on one pitch, using up bow and down bow and bow on its side, and maybe reversing the bow, so you're playing with the wood of the bow, which is an interesting technique, by the way. Holst made use of it in the Planet Suite for the first movement, Mars. He had the violins basically playing with the bow reverse, so they're playing with the wood part, not the hairs, and they're striking the strings with the bow. And it makes a uniquely percussive sound. So those are all different sounds, plus they're different volumes, different dynamics. All of those are in a single file. So if, let's say, you're playing a violin sample, and you want the violins to be playing in thirds, in major thirds. So you're wanting them to play this. Well, are you going to use an up bow sample, a down bow sample? What's the dynamic level going to be? So that's why MIDI data for things like orchestral libraries can be, you know, you need a lot of RAM. If you're going to be working with things like Contact, Omnisphere, or, you know, any of the large orchestral libraries like East West or Spitfire or BBC, any of those, you need a lot of RAM, because all of that has to be processed in near real time. So there is your answer to that. Because some people like to read, but some like to watch. Yeah, that's a good answer there, Bobby, for sure. Sim again says, does Mac version have more optimizations than the Windows one? For Studio One? No, not really. They're both exactly the same program. It's just one works on Mac, one works on PC. They're just optimized for either platform. However, on a Mac, you get to use 2 audio devices. You can record using one audio device and play back using a different one. On a PC, you can't do that. You get one. So, for example, if I go to the start page here, you'll see I've only got the one audio device. Now, if I go to Studio One, Options, Audio Setup, you'll see I only have audio device. On a Mac, you will see recording device and playback device. You can select different ones. You can't do that on a PC, because on a PC, That doesn't exist by design. That's a Windows thing. It's not a Studio One bug. It's not a Studio One problem. It's to do with the fact that when they built Windows originally, they weren't thinking of DAWs. They really weren't thinking of DAWs and complex audio. They were just like, hey, let's build computers. They weren't really thinking about that. Whereas, you know, Apple were actually thinking about, hey, let's design our computers to deal with media. Windows had kind of not really gone down that route. They had gone down with, let's build computers for offices and schools and that kind of thing, where they're not going to necessarily need to be particularly complicated. They don't need complicated audio routing. Whereas on a Mac, Apple, they basically said, actually, let's design a really, really flexible audio routing system. Because you never know what's going to come down the road. They were right. They did that right. They didn't do that right at Microsoft. At Microsoft, they didn't foresee that people would be using computers to make really complex music or wanting to mix music. They didn't think of that. That said, though, you know, I'm not wanting to get into a Mac versus PC debate because everybody has their preference. You can make great music on a Mac. You can make great music on a PC. You can use Studio One on a Mac. You can use Studio One on a PC. They will work just as well on either platform. You can have a hit record on Studio One on a Mac. You can have a hit record in Studio One on a PC. Because it's not the platform that counts. It's how you use it that counts. How you make the best of the advantages you get of a Mac and also the advantages you get out of a PC. Because there are definitely advantages with a PC over a Mac. Apart from the obvious one, which is cost. So, yeah, I hope you like that answer. Yeah, Ronald is right. He says MIDI data itself are only usually kilobytes in size. Yes, that's true. But, like I said, it depends upon the complexity of the sounds being triggered by the MIDI data. That's where things can get a little complicated. Just Bob says, moving sound sets like Contact or another source from C drive recommended to a backup drive to create more space. I would love to do that, but I don't have Contact. I don't have Contact. I recommend you suggest that as a video to Jonny Guide because I know that he does have Contact. I used to have it, but I don't have it now because, you know what? Nowadays, I really don't do that kind of thing anymore. Whereas back then, you know, maybe 10 years ago, yeah, I had a lot of use for Contact, but not really so much anymore. So I don't have it anymore. All right, we have reached the end of time. No, we haven't reached the end of time. We just reached the end of the show. That's all. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming, and thank you for the great questions as well. We have kept ourselves royally entertained for exactly 60 minutes. You guys are epic and awesome. I will see you all on Wednesday night for Songwriting Simplified. If you have something you want to learn about for Wednesday's show, again, go down there. All right, well, you can't follow that link because it's not a link. But make note of the website, johnnylipshamstudios.co.uk. Click on Contact Us. Send me an email. If you've got a particular songwriting question, arranging question, music theory question, anything like that, and it's a little bit more in depth and a little more in detail, email me and we'll go through those at the top of the show on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central, right back here at Jonny Lipsham Studios here in Scotland, the capital of the world, the capital of the solar system, the capital of the galaxy, the capital of the constellation of galaxies. I'm not going to go any further than that because that's ridiculous. Anyway, thanks a lot, folks, and I will see you on Wednesday. Until then, have a great start to your week. Take care, everybody. Good night. You guys can see this. I'm going to put my